Right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us here today. I'm really proud to be able to stand here with a fellow Michigander and talk about this new program. Chairman Peters has been instrumental in making sure that we could have this exciting announcement today. And Chairman Peters, thank you so much for being here and making this a reality. As you may know, the chairman authored the Safeguarding Tomorrow Through Ongoing Risk Mitigation Act, also known as the STORM Act, and it has really helped bring the importance of equitable mitigation to the forefront of the emergency management community. This is a critical initiative at a time when climate change is creating more complex and more frequent disasters. As evidenced by much of the coastal erosion that we've seen around the Great Lakes, this is going to be something that the chairman can support and something that you know very well. At the same time, what we also see is a lack of access to critical resources in communities across the nation, especially our underserved communities. And sadly, this is a reality for many of the communities that we work with. However, the $500 million being announced today with the STORM Act funding that was provided to FEMA through the bipartisan infrastructure law, which Chairman Peters also helped get through Congress, we are committed to making sure that we can get these vital resources to communities that are on the front lines of the climate crisis. Therefore, today we are very excited to announce a first of its kind funding opportunity for this inaugural year of the FEMA Safeguarding Tomorrow Revolving Loan Fund Program. The Safeguarding Tomorrow program provides capitalization grants to eligible communities to establish a revolving loan fund to provide direct loans to local governments. That means that starting today, the first $50 million is going to be available in the Safeguarding Tomorrow program for states, Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, and 15 federally recognized tribes. Furthermore, communities can use these low interest loans with interest rates not to exceed 1% for more than just direct mitigation projects. They can also use them to help meet the federal cost share for FEMA's other hazard mitigation assistance programs, such as our Building Resilient Infrastructure in Communities, or BRIC program, and our Hazard Mitigation Grant Program following disasters. Simply said, for communities that have been tirelessly fighting extreme heat, drought, flooding, and everything in between, this funding is going to help save lives and reduce disaster suffering across our nation. As FEMA administrator, I have seen just how severe the impacts of the climate crisis have been. This is why I believe that applying innovative solutions to the way we build our nation's resilience to these types of events is more important than it has ever been. The Safeguarding Tomorrow program, that is going to help us do that. And as an American, I want to see our country and our future generations kept safe from the climate-driven threats that we can expect to see over the next several years. The Safeguarding Tomorrow program, it will help us do that. And finally, I ask that we always remember that becoming a more resilient nation cannot be a patchwork effort. We must do this work together across every city, nation, town, tribal nation, territory, working together to make our communities more resilient. Chairman Peters, I would like to say thank you for making this happen today. FEMA is proud to carry out this important work in bringing the Safeguarding Tomorrow program to a reality.
Well, thank you, Administrator Criswell, and thank you for your amazing work on this program and all of the men and women who work here at FEMA to make this a reality. But I also want to thank them for always being there in time of need when disasters hit our communities across the nation. You know that the professionals that work here at FEMA are there on the site doing the work that they need to do to help communities recover. The Storm Act, as Administrator mentioned, is about helping communities actually prepare for those storms at the front end. Certainly, we know when a storm hits, the catastrophic consequences that can occur when that happens. But if we can make investments in resilience and make that infrastructure stronger up front, it makes a whole lot more sense. And so this is an innovative program. In fact, I think it's the first time that FEMA has been engaged in a program like this to help local communities build infrastructure that is resilient to the storms. As the administrator said, are coming. We know they're coming, and unfortunately, they're coming with greater frequency and also with greater intensity, which means the cost of picking up the pieces continues to go up. And particularly for underserved communities that traditionally can often get hit the hardest and have the most difficult time trying to recover. So the Storm Act provides money for communities to access on a low interest basis, no more than 1%, to be able to invest in making that infrastructure stronger. It's probably one of the best investments from a taxpayer perspective that you can make. In fact, it has shown that every dollar you spend up front making infrastructure more resilient ends up saving taxpayers $6. I spent time before serving in government in the financial business and investment advisor, and I can tell you, if you told someone for $1 you would save $6, that was an easy sell to make, and that's what is involved here. It's about helping communities get through a very tough time and doing it in a very cost-effective way for the taxpayers. This is also a revolving fund, and so as these communities pay this money back after they've built a more resilient infrastructure and are prepared for those storms and they pay that back, that money is then available for other communities to do it as well. So this will continue to be an ongoing investment into our communities all across the country. So I'm pleased that FEMA is making this announcement here today. States can now start to go through the process to apply for these resources and start this very important work. I certainly want to also thank my colleagues in supporting this initial funding round of $500 million, which was in the bipartisan infrastructure package. I think the results are going to be very clear as this project goes forward, that this is something that we are proud that we invested in, but also probably realize more investment of this nature is going to be necessary as we continue to deal with ever-changing climate situation in our country. So Administrator Criswell, again, thank you for this important announcement. And I think we're all ready to roll up our sleeves and go to work.
We are.
Thank you both. We will now begin our Q&A portion of the press call. I ask that folks in the audience, please raise your hand to be called on. We're going to give it a second for the queue to fill up. I also ask that our friends in the press please rename themselves to signify what outlet they are calling in from. Again, I'm going to give you guys a few seconds to get our hands up. And then we will begin calling on folks. Thank you very much. Our first question comes from TV6, Jess Wiederhold. I'm going to read it. She put it in the chat. Could you name an example of a development someone may see happen as a result of this in Upper Michigan?
You want to take that one? In Upper Michigan?
Certainly, I've seen firsthand the impact of climate change, particularly in our coastal areas, and have traveled to many of those communities in northern Michigan. A variety of things that a community can do to mitigate that. One, for example, would be to build seawalls. To understand that as water levels are rising or flooding occurs, it can cause a great deal of damage. So how do you build seawalls to protect those areas? It could also be just hardening regular infrastructure, bridges and roads as well. I was at a community in northern Michigan recently where a road was basically washed completely out as a result of a major storm event. And part of this money could be used in projects to make sure you're hardening those roadbeds to ensure that when a storm does hit, that road will continue to be serviceable. And you can imagine how important it is to make sure that roads are serviceable. When a major storm hits, you may need emergency vehicles that need to get to people who are in a difficult situation. protecting that infrastructure is also about protecting human lives.
Yeah, and I just want to add more broadly too, is that we want to make sure that we're using this funding to help address some of the future risks and the future threats that our communities are facing. And so we want to work with communities to better understand not just the historical risk that you faced in the past, but to help you understand what types of risks you might expect 5 or 10, 20 years from now that we can start to work on together and use funding and program like this to help meet those needs and reduce the impact that you might have from those. And so we have a lot of tools and resources in addition to this to help communities better understand the needs that they might face in the future. And this can be one of the tools and resources to help eliminate or alleviate some of that stress.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Rick Brewer at WCMU Public Radio. I'm going to ask, Rick, you should be able to go.
Can everyone hear me? Can you hear
Rick,
me?
can you speak up, please?
No. Can you hear me? 1, 2, check, check, check. 1, 2.
Rick, can you put your question in the chat? We're going to go on. We're going to move down the queue. Our next question comes from Tom Frank from E&E News.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Can you tell me a little bit how this fund works? How does FEMA decide who to award loans to? Is there a minimum, a maximum? Is there any effort or priority given to certain, disadvantaged communities? For those of us who don't know how a revolving loan fund is, maybe you can lay out some of the basics. I know it's similar to something the EPA has done.
Exactly. EPA is a good example that has a revolving loan fund. This is the first time FEMA has ever put in place a revolving loan fund, and the notice of funding opportunity that is being released is going to provide all of the specifics and the details of exactly how to apply for that. As the chairman mentioned, it's a $500 million loan over 5 years, and the first $50 million is available within this loan fund. And as you apply for that, we will use the criteria to address the need and where we're going to have the greatest return on investment. We can certainly get more information out to you on some of the specifics, but we're also going to have additional information in the actual NOFO, the Notice of Funding Opportunity that's released.
Thank you, ma'am. We have Rick Brewer coming around a second time, this time in the chat. I'm going to read his question out loud. Senator Peters, how would the Federal Emergency Management Agency's National Risk Index, a law you helped pass recently, limit the damage caused by natural disasters and work with this new loan program?
Well, I think, the part of the assessment, as the administrator mentioned, is about looking forward. Where are those potential risks and how do those risks increasing as a result of climate change? The whole idea of the Storm Act is to make very proactive investments. So the more that we can assess where potential threats are currently, but perhaps more importantly, where those threats are going to occur in the future, we can get ahead of the problem. So all of these factors are all working together. The Storm Act is critically important because you actually want to put some funding behind those decisions to make sure that we can undergo the construction necessary to protect infrastructure and protect communities in the future.
And our final question comes from Dominic Sevilla from the Huron Daily Tribune. He asks, how long does it take from application for funds to allocation?
I think as this is a brand new program, we'll have to see what that process will look like. I do have one person, if you have an answer on that, or if we don't, we can certainly get back to you on some more specifics. Again, this is the first time that we are putting this program in place. And so we'll have a lot to work through with all of those individuals that are going to be applying for programs. But I will tell you, at the chairman's direction, our goal is to get this money out as quickly as possible because we just don't have time to waste, right? The threats are changing around us and we have to make sure that we're getting ahead of this. And these are the types of projects that take sometimes a long time to make a reality, right? They're big projects that take time to build. And so we want to make sure we're getting money out into the hands of people as quickly as we can. So that's our goal.
Seeing no further questions in the queue, this concludes our announcement of community resilience funding. Thank you again for joining us. If you have any follow-up questions, please reach out to me at jeremy.edwards@fema.dhs.gov. Thank you and have a great day.